breaking news is what I'd be saying if I recorded and released this video on January 4th, 2024, which is the day the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General released its report on the risk that publicly available disability benefits questionnaires pose for fraud. Where is this coming from? As you guys know, when the VA assesses a disability for compensation, they use a disability benefits questionnaire to determine the severity of a condition. And basically, this is a form that a doctor fills out, usually at a C&P exam or claim and pension exam, to identify the various symptoms and severities of a particular disability, and then combined with a medical opinion that determines whether or not there's a nexus, the VA comes up with service connection and ultimately a rating. Now, what the VA has done is put up disability benefits questionnaires on its website so that veterans can take these DBQs, as they're called, to their own doctors, so that their own doctors, who are very familiar with the veteran's case, can complete them, and then the veteran can then submit them to the VA so that the VA then knows how severe a condition is. Now, the reason this is concerning is because there's a lot of bad actors out there. You've seen these claims consultants companies and various companies out there that are looking to basically sell disability benefits questionnaires that inflate the ratings to veterans who don't mind submitting them and maybe getting a payout they don't deserve. And this is incredibly problematic, obviously, because the VA just has a problem paying veterans what they do deserve without veterans, probably very few veterans, trying to get something that they don't deserve and by getting one past the VA. Here's what they did. The Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General, or OIG, took a sample of about 100 claims containing about 207 disability benefits questionnaires. They developed a series of criteria to determine what is an indicator of fraud based on this. And they ultimately concluded that of 31,900 claims completed during this 1-year period, they suspect that at least 22,000 of these claims had a disability benefits questionnaire, or DBQ, with one indicator of fraud, which they then conclude may have led to up to $390 million in fraudulently obtained benefits. Let's pump the brakes, though, for a second and talk about why that conclusion is a bit much. Just because there is a single indicator of fraud does not mean that the claim was fraudulent or that the disability benefits questionnaire was fraudulent. So I think that while the potential is there, odds are that the amount of fraud actually happening is very low. What are these indicators of fraud that the VA has identified? And there are 6 of them that are flags for the VA or should be flags for the VA, according to the Office of Inspector General, for when a disability benefits questionnaire maybe isn't on the up and up. First indicator, signs of alteration. So the DBQ looks like it's been altered. Okay, obviously, right? That might be fraudulent. Second one, the contact information discrepancies. So if the doctor who signed the DBQ has an address listed at the bottom, but that address doesn't exist, or the VA can Google that guy and turns out that guy is nowhere near that address, well, that's a discrepancy. So the doctor's office should be their actual office when they list that at the bottom. Examiner's address on the questionnaire is more than 100 miles away from the veteran's address for an in-person examination. Well, yeah, because this makes sense. For an in-person examination, a veteran may not travel. It just seems unlikely the veteran would travel 100 miles each way. So this might be a red flag warning that if this exam says that the veteran reported, but it's over 100 miles away, well, that raises suspicions that maybe the veteran didn't actually report and maybe there's a little bit of fibbing going on. The fourth example, other available evidence contradicts the findings of the questionnaire. Now, this is actually where I have a problem, because the VA is supposed to weigh contradicting evidence, and 2 doctors, even that you're seeing for treatment, may disagree or may take different measurements or may have different symptoms showing on different days. So I have a problem with this. And the other problem is that if the VA is relying on its own disability benefits questionnaires that's doing through its contractors, those are notoriously bad. The VA knows that. Anyone doing this line of work knows that. They are trash for the most part. Now, some C&P examiners do a great job. Day in and day out, I see this, the decision review officers see this, the Board of Veterans Appeals see this, where we see just absolutely garbage exams. So if the VA is relying on garbage evidence, maybe they're not in the best position to say that another piece of evidence that contradicts that garbage evidence is fraudulent. Just saying. The veteran refused a VA examination. Now, I will almost never tell a veteran to skip an exam, right? If the VA directs you to go to an exam, you should go to that exam 99.9% of the time. Even when the VA is trying to develop to deny, skipping an exam can oft, or at least without an excuse, can often be held against the veteran. Should it? Not really. So if you miss an exam and it was just an accident, call that VA 1-800 number, let them know. They should put a ticket in your file. Also, submit a letter through the va.gov to upload it to your file, just notifying them that, hey, I missed the exam. You should also contact the contractor that you missed the exam, it wasn't on purpose, and you intend to report. So again, if you just flat out refuse to report to an exam, that might be held against you, and the DBQ you submitted may look fraudulent to them. Now, here's the last one. This also makes sense. The assignment of a 100% disability rating without evidence of current treatment or anything else confirming the severity of the condition. Listen, if you think that you can go buy a DBQ online somewhere and get a 100% rating for that, but there's no other medical evidence that your condition's that bad, well, that's a problem, right? And obviously the VA is going to see it as such. So what does this all mean? The VA OIG gave them 5 recommendations, gave the Department of Veterans Affairs 5 recommendations. And they said, the first one was to the Office of Financial Management to develop a system for capturing, analyzing, and monitoring public questionnaires to identify whether or not they're authentic or potentially fraudulent, and to work with the compensation services to develop policies for how to review these and remediate them when they suspect one is fraudulent. The second one, have the Medical Disability Evaluation Office update the examiner certification and signature section found in public questionnaires to include that the form is being completed under the penalty of perjury, and to ask the examiners to list any organizations that requested they complete the examinations on the claimant's behalf. Again, you need to be able to stand by the evidence you're submitting to the VA. If you're a veteran submitting a fraudulent thing, you're submitting that yourself under the penalty of perjury. Folks, you can't just get garbage evidence and submit it to the VA and assume that everything's going to be fine. So, if you submit something you know is a lie, that's not good. Right? Don't do that. Instruct Compensation Service to provide claims processors guidance in the procedures manual on how to identify a potentially fraudulent public questionnaire and to provide the steps they should take when they suspect that one is fraudulent. Basically, if something gets flagged, they need to have a system for following up on that. Fourth, require compensation services to inform claims processors as part of the public questionnaire to review process that they have a duty to review and weigh all the evidence of record, including public questionnaires, and that they have the responsibility to assign low or no probative value if they have reason to suspect that the public questionnaire is inauthentic or potentially fraudulent. Translated into plain English, they want the folks reviewing all these to assign low or no value if they think it's inauthentic. Now, quite frankly, to the fact that they're even looking at them, my biggest problem with the VA right now is that they're not looking at these publicly available questionnaires or nexus letters, and instead relying on their own garbage opinions and garbage nexus letters. So I kind of think it's funny that they're now saying, well, you should assign a low or no probative value, because honestly, I'm not sure that they were ever looking at them to begin with. But again, that's a little tongue in cheek. And the fifth one, direct the Veterans Benefits Administration to develop and provide training on authentication and fraud, including training related to public questionnaires, and to provide claims processors with the knowledge to identify inauthentic or potentially fraudulent public questionnaires, and to include what steps claims processors should take when they make that determination. Another great suggestion, but again, this OIG report's kind of narrow, and quite frankly, I think is missing the bigger picture. Right now, I think that the problems in the disability evaluations done by claim and pension or C&P examiners is a scandal on how bad they are. On a daily basis, we see cut and paste exams when I'm reviewing files for veterans. I know the decision review officers are doing the same. Just last week, I had an exam where the C&P examiner, a nurse practitioner, didn't understand Parkinsonism, which is a presumptive condition for Agent Orange. They just didn't understand it, so they checked the wrong block, and this now puts them several more months behind in their claim. And this is a very ill veteran that I was dealing with. So again, do not mistake this report for a solution to the problem. The VA OIG and VA as a whole needs to look into its own C&P exams as well as the potentially fraudulent ones. Now, are these good suggestions for perhaps developing some systems? Yeah, sure, that's fine. As long as they're not used as a cudgel to dismiss valid publicly available or veteran submitted DBQs and nexus letters. And that's my concern. My concern is that the VA is going to point to this report and say, oh, you submitted your own nexus letter and your own DBQ, therefore it must be fraudulent. That is my concern. And that is rarely the case. I think the amount of fraud happening is probably pretty low. The reason veterans are turning to private DBQs and private nexus letters is because they can't get a good exam from the VA. Again, I don't use them very often because I have found them to not always be helpful. But when I do, they are often ignored, forcing us to appeal to higher and higher levels. So to the VA, I don't think anyone in management watches these videos, but if you do, the exam process has got to be fixed. The handful of fraudulent DBQs that come in, shame on them, shame on those veterans, shame on those doctors. But I'm telling you, many more veterans get screwed out of their benefits by really shoddy C&P exams and the failure of quality control to keep an eye on these contractors to make sure the exams are answering the questions that need to be answered for a good evaluation, making sure that folks are qualified to be giving these exams in the first place. Hint, a nurse practitioner should not be doing a Parkinson's exam unless they are a neurology nurse practitioner. It's a scandal. The VA needs to focus on fixing the exam process. I have made videos on this before. The exam process is broken and needs fixing and needs to be fixed yesterday. For the veterans out there, if you've been denied your disability claim, you think because of a bad exam, or you need help appealing your exam, please, or rather your claim, reach out to us. Let us see what we can do to help. Till next time, take care.